The untimely death of 22-year-old Annalise Johnstone on a chilly night in May 2018 continues to haunt the community of Dundee. Her final hours remain shrouded in mystery, leaving unanswered questions about what truly happened on that tragic day. On May 9th, 2018, Annalise left her hometown of Auchterarder around midday. She was accompanied by her older brother, Jordan Johnstone, and his partner, Angela Newland. The couple had recently been displaced from their home due to severe flooding and were left without a stable place to stay. Their struggles, however, were overshadowed by the devastating events that would soon unfold. At 2 p.m., security cameras captured Jordan and Angela at a Sainsbury's supermarket. 2 hours later, Annalise was seen on CCTV at the Alpine store in Auchterarder. Shortly after, she dropped off her beloved dog, Peach, with a friend named Donna Payton. Annalise promised Donna that she would return within an hour to pick up Feek, but hours passed without her coming back. Around 7 p.m., she messaged Donna, apologizing for the delay and assuring her that she would pick up the dog soon. Unfortunately, that promise would remain unfulfilled. Later that evening, Annalise joined Jordan, Angela, and Jordan's 4 children in a Ford Galaxy as they went out to grab food. Just after midnight, on May 10th, the vehicle was captured on CCTV at a garage in Kingsway, Dundee. From there, the group drove to Camperdown Park. Private security footage later showed the Ford Galaxy near the Maggie Wall Monument between 1:28 and 2 a.m. This eerie site, steeped in local folklore, is believed to commemorate a woman accused of witchcraft centuries ago. During their brief stop at the monument, the vehicle left and returned, staying there for approximately 15 minutes before finally driving away. What transpired during those mysterious 15 minutes remains a crucial unanswered question. Later that day, a retired couple, Stephen and Elaine Bailey, were out for a walk near the Maggie Wall Monument. They stumbled upon a horrifying discovery: the lifeless body of Annalise Johnstone, lying behind a dry stone dike. Her throat had been brutally slashed, causing her death almost instantly. At first, the couple thought they had found a mannequin, as the pale skin and an unusual glow near her neck gave the scene an unreal appearance. However, the horrifying reality quickly became apparent. In the early hours of May 11th, Jordan Johnstone contacted the police to report his sister missing. He gave his address as Raven Grove, but when officers arrived, the home was completely empty. Jordan was later located at Angela Newland's parents' house in Dundee. Back at police headquarters, Jordan provided a statement regarding his sister's disappearance. However, before he could finish, detectives informed him of the grim news that a deceased woman matching Annalise's description had been found. Witnesses described Jordan as deeply emotional and visibly upset upon hearing the news. Despite his apparent grief, both Jordan and Angela were arrested and later put on trial for Annalise's murder. Angela was quickly cleared of all charges after a witness placed her miles away from the crime scene at the time of the murder, providing her with a solid alibi. Jordan, however, gave a disturbing account of the events. He admitted to carrying Annalise's lifeless body in his arms and placing it behind the dry stone dike. His justification for this action was his fear that Angela's father might harm Annalise further. Despite this confession, Jordan was ultimately acquitted. The jury returned a not proven verdict, a unique outcome in Scottish law that falls short of a conviction, but does not fully exonerate the accused. The trial was further complicated by conflicting accusations between Jordan and Angela, which the judge ruled could not be used as reliable evidence. As a result, neither was held accountable for Annalise's death. Years have passed since that tragic night, yet Annalise Johnstone's murder remains unsolved. Her brutal death near the Maggie Wall Monument continues to cast a dark shadow over Perthshire. The unanswered questions and lingering doubts surrounding her case leave her family and community in a state of sorrow and uncertainty. To this day, Annalise's story serves as a haunting reminder of a life cut short and justice yet to be served. On the morning of November 2nd, 2010, a chilling news story captured the attention of everyone in Guildford. Molan, an 80-year-old mother, felt a deep sense of dread as she listened to the broadcast. Though the news anchor didn't mention any names, Molan had a haunting intuition that the story was about her daughter, Roberta Bobby Miller. The tragedy had unfolded just the day before, claiming not only Bobby's life, but also that of her loyal dog, Sport. What could have led to such a horrifying event in the quiet, serene town of Guildford? Bobby, 54, had recently started a new chapter in her life. She had moved into a modest home on Country Club Road after finalizing a difficult divorce from her husband, Gary Miller, just a few months earlier. Their marriage, which began in the early 1980s, after meeting in the late 70s when Bobby worked as a waitress, had lasted decades. Together they raised 2 children, Jennifer and Jonathan, building what seemed to be a stable life. However, by the mid-2000s, cracks began to appear in their relationship, and by 2007, the marriage had reached its breaking point. The divorce was finalized on August 13, 2010, leaving Bobby to rebuild her life in a new home across from Lake Whippoorwill. Unfortunately, peace was short-lived. Gary's lawyer soon filed a motion accusing Bobby of not adhering to her part of their property agreement. A court date had been set for the following days, adding another layer of stress to her life. Despite this, the Halloween weekend of 2010 appeared uneventful. On Friday, Bobby went on a date. The next day, she had dinner and watched movies with her close friend Diane. By Sunday, October 31st, she was busy working on her home. Around 5 p.m., she visited a Lowe's store, just 5 miles from her house, picking up supplies. But sometime after she returned home, everything took a dark and unexpected turn. An unknown individual approached Bobby's home later that evening. Her car, parked visibly in the driveway, signaled her presence inside. While she was in the kitchen, she was fatally shot. The sound of the gunshot shattered the stillness of the neighborhood, ending her life instantly. The circumstances of the crime only deepened the mystery. There were no signs of forced entry, leaving investigators to wonder if the intruder had a key, if Bobby had left the doors unlocked, or if she had trusted the person enough to let them inside, willingly. The possibility of robbery was quickly ruled out. Despite $26,000 in cash being in the house, nothing was stolen. Further investigation uncovered an additional $35,200 in cash and checks intended for the family. As detectives dug deeper, the story became even more complex. Just 2 days before Bobby's murder, on October 29th, a suspicious fire had destroyed a lakeside cabin co-owned by Bobby and Gary on Great East Lake. The fire was determined to be arson, raising more questions about whether it was connected to her death. Initially, suspicion fell on Gary. Investigators scrutinized his alibi, questioned him extensively, and even administered polygraph tests. Ultimately, he was cleared of any involvement. Attention then shifted to their son, Jonathan, who was named a person of interest. Despite this lead, no concrete evidence ever emerged to implicate him or anyone else in the crime. Who would have wanted Bobby dead? Was the fire at the cabin a warning or a completely unrelated event? These questions remain unanswered. Bobby's brother Ken has never given up hope of finding the truth. He keeps a memory book dedicated to his sister and has offered a $55,000 reward for any information that leads to an arrest and conviction. The loss of Bobby has left a void in her family and community, and after all these years, her case still casts a dark shadow over Guildford. The lingering mystery continues to haunt those who knew and loved her as they wait for justice to be served finally. Born on May 12, 1974 in Virginia, Amy Lynn Bradley was a beautiful and talented 23-year-old who had a bright future ahead of her. She was highly athletic, and this athleticism earned her a basketball scholarship at Longford University in Farmville, Virginia. On top of that, she was a strong swimmer and volunteered as both a swimming instructor and a lifeguard. After graduating from the university with a degree in physical education, she was heading back to college to get a master's degree in sports psychology. She had also recently accepted a position working at a computer consulting firm. In early 1998, Amy's father, Ron Bradley, won a cruise to the Caribbean islands. Ron and his wife, Iva, wanted to take the family on one more major vacation before Amy and her brother, Brad, pursued careers and had families of their own. At some point, Ron's friend Zachary was also invited by the family, so it would be 5 of them in total. On March 21st, the Bradley family, along with Zachary, boarded a Royal Caribbean cruise ship known as the Rhapsody. They set sail from the Pan American Pier of San Juan, Puerto Rico, and were headed to the beautiful island of Aruba. As soon as they began their cruise, Amy's mother and father noticed that she was attracting a lot of unwanted attention from the crew members. At one point, after the family ate dinner, a waiter approached Iva and asked her where her daughter was. Her mother, taken aback by the forward question, asked why he needed to know. The waiter responded that he and some of the other crew members wanted to invite Amy to go to a restaurant in the area. Though she didn't say it outright, Iva felt a bit uneasy about the fairly forward and inappropriate question. When Amy returned, her father told her that one of the waiters had stopped at their table and asked to take her out with his friends. She gave her father a look and then told him that she thought it was creepy. She also made it clear to both her parents that she didn't intend on going anywhere with the men. Adding to the creep factor, a dance company had boarded the cruise ship, and one of the members, a bass player, had been flirting heavily with Amy and was sort of crossing the line with his advances. But despite these uncomfortable incidents, Amy was traveling with her family and her brother's friend, who were always nearby. 3 days into the cruise, the Rhapsody began its second leg of the journey, heading south towards Curaçao. The distance between the two islands is 113 kilometers, or 70 miles, which meant it would take the cruise ship between 4 to 6 hours to travel. The night before, Amy and her brother had watched a concert orchestra named Blue Orchid play. Amy had made friends with a few of the orchestra members and was invited to a party with them after the show at one of the ship's nightclubs. During the party, Amy and Brad danced and got drinks from the bar. By chance, a TV director and video editor named Chris Fenwick happened to be producing a video at the same club. He had spent most of his time in his cabin, working on editing projects, until that night. It was during this chance encounter that Amy was caught on video, just hours before she would disappear and never be seen again. In this video, she was seen dancing with one of the orchestra members, a man by the nickname Yellow. At around 3:30 a.m., after the party had wound down, both Amy and Brad returned to the cabin at the end of the night. After they got into the room, the two of them spent some time catching up on the balcony until Brad was finally tired enough and told Amy he was going to bed. She told him she was going to try to sleep on the balcony in a lounge chair because the motion of the ship was kind of making her seasick and the fresh air was nice. With that, the two of them said goodnight, and then they both fell asleep. At some point, after they fell asleep, Ron woke up, looked around the room, and saw Brad, then Amy, outside on the balcony. Seeing that his kids were both safe and in the room, he went right back to sleep. About 30 minutes later, at about 6 a.m., Ron woke up again, looked over to the balcony, and saw that Amy was no longer in the lounge chair, and the balcony door had been left open. Almost immediately, he had sort of a funny feeling about her being gone. It was unlike her to be up so early, especially after having been up so late. Upon seeing this, he got up, left the room, and went to some of the ship's common areas, hoping to run into her. Then, when he couldn't find her anywhere either, he started to get a little bit more anxious. He went back to the room, woke up Iva and Brad, and asked if either of them knew where she had gone. Brad thought she had mentioned getting off in port that day to buy some stuff, but figured she'd wait until later to go with everyone. Already, something didn't seem right to Amy's parents, so they went to tell the security on the ship that she was missing. In a panic, her mum pleaded with the crew not to put the planks down to the port. She begged them to lock up the ship so that no one could get off before a search was completed. Amy's mum was convinced that someone had taken her daughter. She also pleaded with them to make an announcement, calling Amy to the deck where they were on. Unfortunately, the crew refused to do either of these. They weren't holding up the ship to search, and they also refused to make an announcement because they said it was too early in the morning. It wasn't until around 8 a.m., when almost everyone had already left the ship, that an announcement was made. On August 13, 2024, the family of Ryan Borgwart reported him as a missing person, beginning a terrifying journey. They were hoping for good news, but the initial signs in the investigation suggested that it would have a tragic ending. None of them suspected what had happened. Borgwart was 44 years old at the time of his disappearance. He lived in Wisconsin with his wife, Emily, and their 3 children, and owned a woodworking company. His life seemed ideal. In the summers, he would often take the children kayaking and seemed to enjoy the outdoors. The last time his friends or family heard from him was August 12th. He'd gone to Green Lake, the deepest body of water in the state, to go on a solo fishing trip. It was nothing out of the ordinary, and Emily didn't think she had any reason to worry about her husband. At 10:45 p.m., she received a text message from him to let her know that he was heading back to shore. The next morning, Borgwart still wasn't home, and Emily contacted the police. It wasn't long before the police located Borgwart's vehicle parked near Dodge Memorial Park, on the southwest side of the lake. There was no sign of any struggle near the vehicle, and it didn't look as if he had returned after his fishing trip. A search of the lake would confirm that. During the first search, the team found his overturned kayak and life jacket. Later searches would turn up his fishing rod and tackle box, which still had his phone, wallet, and car keys inside. The obvious answer was that Borgwart had gotten into trouble on the water, and it seemed unlikely that he was still alive. Even though a rescue was unlikely, search teams continued to look over the lake to find any trace of him. The police used drones and sniffer dogs to try to locate him. After the official search was called off, the community continued to try to find answers for Emily and the couple's children. Emily kept the public informed with social media. She had to go back to work, but continued to raise money to help provide funds for the search teams. One way she did this was through selling t-shirts with the phrase "Faith over Fear" on them. A volunteer group called Bruce's Legacy spent weeks going over the lake with sonar equipment. The group is based in Wisconsin and specializes in finding the remains of people who go missing in water. This is primarily through side-scanning sonar, which allows them to look under the water and spot things on lake beds. Bruce's Legacy searched every inch of the 1,500-acre lake for any sign of the missing man. The organization's founder later described waking up in the middle of the night and going over sonar images because he was desperate to find Borgwart and bring closure to the family. When no trace of Borgwart was found, the police began to suspect something else was going on. They thought that they would have found his remains by now and were convinced that he wasn't in the lake. It then came to their attention that someone had used Borgwart's passport to enter Canada on August 13th, the day after he vanished. Borgwart's disappearance was no longer a simple case of someone going missing over a body of water. When the police began to investigate the man himself, they discovered the case was far stranger than they had first expected. Borgwart's wife was able to hand over his passport. He'd left it behind, as he would have no need for it on the fishing trip. But the police discovered he'd recently reported it missing and had ordered a new copy of the document. This was what he had used to disappear. Going over his other belongings, investigators found the hard drive of his laptop had recently been replaced. That didn't stop the police, and they soon found more clues about his disappearance. He'd recently transferred funds to a foreign bank account and altered the email address attached to that account. They found a photo of his new passport on the laptop and discovered that he had taken out a $375,000 life insurance policy on himself. The most critical piece of evidence, though, was communications between BORGWARDT and a woman in Uzbekistan. In November, almost 3 months after he vanished, the police announced that they believed BORGWARDT was still alive and had faked the entire situation. They had told Emily of this revelation about a month earlier, but needed to keep quiet as they gathered as much information as they could. She did not know the plan beforehand and hadn't been involved. In a press conference, the police revealed that they thought BORGWARDT was living somewhere in Eastern Europe and asked for him to contact them, or his family, to let them know he was okay. It was unlikely that he would face any criminal charges, although there is a chance he could face obstruction charges, and the police may charge him for restitution for the money spent during the search effort. News of BORGWARDT's scheme made headlines around the world, and people contacted the police with tips when they believed they spotted the missing man. Many of these concerned a man from California who was featured in a viral TikTok video, but the police confirmed that this wasn't BORGWARDT. Only a few days after the press conference, the police were contacted by a Russian-speaking woman who knew BORGWARDT. Whether or not this was the woman from Uzbekistan was unclear. BORGWARDT himself contacted the police via email and sent messages back and forth with local law enforcement, telling them how he had made his getaway. He explained that he had taken a child-sized inflatable raft onto the lake, as well as the kayak. After sinking the kayak, he paddled back to shore, where he had stored an e-bike. BORGWARDT used the bike to travel to Madison, where he caught a bus heading to Detroit. From there, he took a bus to a Canadian airport and flew to his current location. He claimed he didn't expect people to search the lake for so long and thought they would have just determined that he had passed away. BORGWARDT didn't even reveal the country where he was currently living, but did send a video to the police to serve as proof of life evidence. In it, he gave the date as November 11th and explained that he was safe and not in any trouble. Whether or not his journey was exactly what happened is unclear, but it doesn't seem as if the police are looking for any kind of accomplice who may have helped BORGWARDT reach Canada. The police also haven't shared the motive he gave for his disappearance. While there was plenty of speculation online about the woman in Uzbekistan, the police simply said that BORGWARDT had personal reasons and thought that this was the right thing to do. Even so, the police have urged him to return home for the sake of his children. On the night of August 29, 2015, around 10:30 p.m., Elijah Bear Diaz was dropped off at his home on Joey Avenue in El Cajon, California, by his mother. Less than an hour later, at 11:19 p.m., she received a text from him, a message that would tragically turn out to be the last communication she'd ever have with her son. The following day, concerned after not hearing from him, Bear's mother returned to his home around 4 p.m. What she found was deeply unsettling. Bear was gone. His crutches, which he needed to walk due to a foot injury, were missing. Also gone were his 50-inch TV, a bedsheet, the contents of his safe, and a red rucksack containing his diabetic medication for the week. But here's where it gets even stranger. His prescription glasses, toothbrush, and phone charger were all left behind. How could someone with such limited mobility manage to leave or be taken, along with all those items, especially something as bulky as a TV? Bear couldn't walk far on his own and definitely couldn't drive because of his injuries. The mystery only deepened as investigators began piecing together the events surrounding his disappearance. His cell phone was turned off the day after he vanished, and his bank account remained untouched. He also hadn't logged into any of his social media accounts. However, his phone last pinged in 2 locations. First, at 1:29 a.m., near the Barona Reservation and Casino, and later near Santa Isabel. Search teams scoured both areas, but found little to no clues. Investigators even used luminol in Bear's room, a chemical that reveals traces of blood or bodily fluids, but their efforts yielded nothing. It was as if he had vanished without a trace. Bear, a member of the Barona tribe in San Diego County, would regularly receive checks from the tribe. But none of these checks had been picked up or deposited since his disappearance. Why would he suddenly stop collecting them? Here's another puzzling detail. Bear was known for being dependable. He would never just disappear without telling someone. He deeply valued his connection to his tribe and never missed tribal events. That's when the story took an even more unexpected twist. Another 20-year-old, Skylar Peterson Toy, disappeared under equally puzzling circumstances. Before he vanished, Skylar had sent a message to his mother, Olivia, saying he was going hiking with two friends named Addis and Eli. The problem? Olivia didn't recognize those names, and no one seemed to know who these two people were. Later that same day, at around 8 p.m., Skylar sent another message to his mother. This one was confusing and unsettling. He mentioned two wealthy women and something about a passport. The strange wording and tone made Olivia wonder if her son had gotten involved with some sort of cult. Her concern pushed her to act immediately. She discovered that Skylar had been dropped off by an Uber near San Pasqual Academy, a remote area in Escondido, California. As she searched for answers, Olivia came across another missing person case, that of Elijah Bear Diaz, who had disappeared just one day earlier. At first, Olivia thought there might be a connection. Could Eli in Skylar's message have been Elijah Diaz? But after speaking with police, authorities were firm in their belief that the two cases were unrelated. However, one eerie detail stood out. Both young men shared a striking resemblance. They were both thin, dark-haired, and in their early 20s, and both had vanished mysteriously, leaving their loved ones with endless questions. Is it all just a coincidence, or is there something more sinister tying these two cases together? On September 3rd, 2019, Michael SAMDASS left his mother's home in Hamilton, Canada, before vanishing without a trace. For 4 years, the family searched for answers to this personal mystery before Michael was finally found. Michael was 40 years old at the time of his disappearance. He was one of 5 siblings and part of a close-knit family. His sisters described him as the life and soul of the party. He was extremely extroverted and liked to have a good time. At school, he played sports and considered an art career. Michael ended up working in the family's home renovations and real estate business. His parents had built the business from the ground up after arriving in Canada decades earlier, having migrated from Guyana. Michael kept his interests in sports, playing soccer at Soccer World. He also visited dance clubs with his sisters. It was rare for him to go a day without talking to any of them. But the past few years had been difficult for Michael and the entire family. In 2017, he was attacked at an event and suffered a knock to the head. There didn't seem to be any lasting damage at the time, but shortly after, Michael's family noticed his personality had completely changed. Michael became more introverted and withdrawn. He would talk to himself, sleep in a lot, and didn't care about his appearance, according to family members. He moved into his parents' basement and rarely saw the light of day. There was also a more violent streak, which grew around the same time. The neighbors gave him the nickname Rant because they could sometimes hear him shouting. Some compared it to the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, considering how much Michael had changed from who he was before. The personality change made it clear that Michael wasn't acting like himself at all, and his family didn't know what was wrong. On multiple occasions, they tried to get him seen by mental health professionals, but each time he was tested, they determined there was nothing wrong with him. In mid-2019, Michael was held at a hospital for a few days, but he was then released. This was shortly before he vanished. Michael was last seen by his mother as he left her home in the Stony Creek area on September 3rd. It's not clear what his family thought he was going to be doing that day, but they expected him to come home that evening. This didn't happen, and the family tried to report him missing, only to be told that they needed to wait 48 hours. This wasn't and never is true, and that delay cost investigators valuable time. The first 48 hours are the most important in a missing person case, and the chances of finding someone rapidly decrease the longer they're missing. When investigators began the search for Michael, they were already on the back foot. There was little media attention on the case, but the family continued to push to raise awareness. Eventually, it emerged that Michael had been spotted in Toronto, 2 days after he was last seen by his family. On September 4th, he was picked up by the police after getting into a fight with a homeless person. He was charged and held overnight, then released the following day. When he didn't show up for a court appearance, an arrest warrant was issued. The discovery moved the missing person case to Toronto. It was believed that Michael may have been living among the city's homeless population. Michael stood at over 6 feet tall, and his family were confident that he would stand out. For months, Michael's family visited Toronto with photos, appealing for information. There were many alleged sightings, but none of them could be confirmed. The family also heard rumors about things that might have happened to him. At one point, someone claimed a psychic had told them that someone had taken Michael's life, but there is no evidence that this was the case. No sign of Michael could be found, and the family grew frustrated about the lack of publicity his case was receiving. Other missing person cases in the area had gotten national attention, but Michael's case was more limited. Many people in Toronto hadn't heard about the missing person case at all, which meant that there could have been valuable information that nobody realized was important. The family issued a reward of $25,000 for information, and his case was featured on the TV show Never Seen Again, which brought some awareness to Michael's disappearance. A group that helped Michael's family was the Please Bring Me Home charity. The organization is based in Canada and focuses on taking and following up on anonymous tips across the country and into the United States. Even with help from the organization, there was no sign of Michael until May of 2023. The organization used photo recognition technology to help their search. A hit came up when a police mugshot from Florida was uploaded. The mugshot showed a homeless man who did bear some resemblance to Michael. After working with another non-profit organization and the police in the US, the team was able to compare the fingerprints of this man to those on file in Canada. They were a match. This was Michael SAMDASS. Michael had been picked up in Florida after a violent crime in which he attacked a woman. He was seen carrying with him 2 backpacks, a sleeping bag, and a few personal items, which included ID cards from Canada and Mexico. He gave his name as Asa Baba Nadoba. After the police confirmed that this was the missing Canadian, Michael's family were informed. They had no idea how he had gotten to Florida or why he was there. They also didn't know how to approach the situation and didn't want to scare Michael off again. But some family members traveled down to Florida. When Michael was in court for the attack he had committed, he had no recognition of his family and didn't seem to know who they were. He also didn't respond to the name of Michael SAMDASS. As part of the process, he saw a mental health professional who confirmed that he wasn't fit to stand trial. For Michael's family, it was a relief to know that he was alive, even though it was obvious he'd been through a lot in the 4 years that he'd been missing. One sister commented that her hope for her brother was that they got back the Michael that she knew. She had changed a lot since 2017. It's hoped that he can now get the mental help that he needs. On the 1st of May, 2022, 32-year-old TAHNEE SHANKS, who was originally from Queensland, Australia, traveled from her home in Mérida, Mexico, to Cancun with her estranged husband, Jorge Aguado, and their 2-year-old daughter, LYNN. They planned to have a holiday. The following day, the family checked out of their hotel, and TAHNEE's white, 4-wheel drive vehicle was spotted by toll road cameras as they headed toward Mérida. However, the footage also shows that at around 12 p.m., they made an abrupt U-turn. Then, at around 9 p.m. that night, Carlos Santos, a man who was on vacation with his family, found TAHNEE's daughter, LYNN, wandering barefoot outside a church in Cancun. He stated that a man had pointed the girl out to him and promised that he would return soon, but the man never came back. After contacting the police, Carlos began sharing pictures of Adeline on social media. This resulted in her grandmother, LYNN, and LYNN's brother, Ben, recognizing her. A few days later, Adeline was found to be unharmed, and she is now living with her grandparents in Queensland, Australia. Tahnee's car was later found that same night in the town of Puerto Morelos, 25 miles from Cancun. The vehicle was completely burned out, and Tahnee has remained missing ever since. Police believe that the 8-hour period between the afternoon and the evening of the 2nd of May holds the answers to Tahnee's disappearance, as there is no account of what transpired during that time. They have, however, stated that they are working on 2 different theories that they hope will help solve the case. The first theory is that there was an incident between Tahnee and Jorge, and that Jorge is currently on the run, or possibly in hiding, after being involved in her disappearance. The second theory suggests that Jorge may have been involved in illegal activities in Mexico, and that Tahnee may have been abducted by a cartel as payback. In an interview with 60 Minutes, Quintana Roo State Attorney General Oscar Montes de Oca Rosales revealed that Jorge had been threatened by a cartel in the past. On that occasion, he even went as far as hiring a bodyguard as he feared for his life. It also came to light that Tahnee had sent a text to a friend asking her to keep the name Jorge Aguado. She stated that if anything were to happen to her, the police should investigate him. Tahnee's brother Ben has offered a $70,000 reward for any information on the case. However, police advised Ben that a reward might not be wise, as it could lead to an influx of false leads. Yet, despite the significant reward, not a single tip has been received since Tahnee's disappearance. Authorities in Aberdeen, Scotland, are growing increasingly concerned for the safety and well-being of sisters ELIZA and HENRIETTA Husty, who mysteriously vanished on January 7, 2025. The 32-year-old sisters, part of a set of triplets, originally from Hungary, have not been seen or heard from since that day, leaving their family devastated and searching for answers. Their triplet sister, Edith, was among the last people to speak to them before their disappearance. Edith told investigators that their last conversation took place over a video call on New Year's Eve. During the call, the sisters appeared to be in good spirits. However, Edith found it unusual to see them walking the streets of Aberdeen so late at night during the call. The sisters had moved to Scotland 7 years ago in search of new opportunities, leaving behind their home in Hungary. According to their brother, Josef, the last known contact between ELIZA and HENRIETTA and their mother occurred on January 4, 2025. They spoke on the phone for around 40 minutes, and nothing seemed unusual or concerning during the call. Family members described the two sisters as inseparable. They were known for being homebodies who preferred quiet nights cooking and watching movies together over going out. Their close bond makes their sudden and simultaneous disappearance all the more distressing. The investigation into their disappearance revealed that ELIZA and HENRIETTA were last seen on CCTV footage, walking along Market Street near the River Dee in Aberdeen. This area, which includes several commercial and industrial buildings, has become the central focus of the search efforts. Police and search teams are combing through the surrounding areas, including the icy waters of the river, in hopes of finding any sign of the sisters. On January 11, 2025, authorities released the CCTV footage showing the sisters walking near the river in the hope that someone might recognize them or provide information about their whereabouts. Investigators have urged the public to remain vigilant and immediately report any sightings to the authorities. Businesses along South Esplanade and Menzies Road have been asked to review their security camera footage for any possible sightings of the sisters, while motorists who were in the area on January 7th are being asked to check their dashcam recordings for any clues. Unfortunately, no additional leads have been uncovered so far. The sisters were last seen crossing Victoria Bridge before turning onto a footpath that runs along the River Dee. The path appears to lead toward the Aberdeen Boat Club, but it remains unclear if that was their intended destination. Since no further footage of their movements has been found, it's uncertain what happened after they left the view of the cameras. The search for ELIZA and HENRIETTA has been extensive, involving police dogs, members of the Marine unit, and even helicopters conducting aerial sweeps. Divers have scoured the icy river, but have yet to uncover any significant evidence or clues about what may have happened to them. Police have stated that they will continue speaking with anyone who knew the sisters, in hopes of piecing together their final movements or uncovering any plans they might have had that night. Both women are described as being slim in build, with long brown hair, and authorities are relying on members of the public to come forward with any information that could aid the investigation. Anyone who may have seen ELIZA or HENRIETTA or has information about their disappearance is urged to contact the police by calling the 101 emergency number and quoting case incident number 0735 of Tuesday, January 7, 2025. The family is desperate for answers and hopeful that the sisters will soon be found safe.